I was 8 months pregnant when my husband-to-be slid the prenup across the table and asked me to sign away my rights to the bakery I'd spent 6 years building, 12 hours before our wedding. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The lawyer was waiting. My mother sat frozen in the corner of that downtown Toronto office, and the man I'd loved for 4 years wouldn't even look up from his phone. I thought that was the worst betrayal I'd ever feel. I was wrong, because 30 seconds before I signed, his father walked into that office, ripped the document out from under my pen, and told the lawyer to call off the wedding entirely. My name is Hannah Reyes. I'm 31, and I run a small bakery in the East End of Toronto that I built from nothing. Flour-dusted countertops, a second-hand mixer I bought off Kijiji, and 4 years of 6 a.m. mornings. The night before what was supposed to be my wedding day, I was sitting in a glass-walled conference room on the 40th floor of a Bay Street office tower, 8 months pregnant, staring at a stack of paper that would erase me from my own business. My fiancé's name was Connor Bishop. We met 4 years ago when he walked into my shop for a coffee and stayed for 2 hours talking about nothing and everything. He was charming in that easy, polished way. Finance background, family money, the kind of guy who always seemed to know the right thing to say. For most of those 4 years, I believed we had something real. We weren't perfect. We argued about how much he worked, about how often his mother called him during dinner. But I never thought it would end with me being asked to give up everything I owned the night before I married him. 3 months before the wedding, Connor started pulling away. He'd come home late without explanation. The man who used to send me good morning texts every single day stopped answering for hours. I told myself it was wedding stress, the kind everyone warns you about. I told myself the pregnancy was making me paranoid. But there was a tightness in my chest every time I asked him what was wrong, and he said the same thing back. Nothing, Hannah. I'm just tired. Tired became the wall between us. 2 weeks before the wedding, his mother started coming around the bakery more than usual. She'd never once helped me roll out a single croissant in 4 years, and suddenly she was there twice a week, asking detailed questions about my supplier contracts, my lease, my equity in the building. I thought she was just being nosy, the way some mothers-in-law are. I had no idea she was building a file. The night before the wedding, Connor told me his family's lawyer wanted to meet with us, just to finalize a few details. I assumed it was seating arrangements or the catering deposit. Instead, I was handed a 30-page prenuptial agreement that stripped my ownership of the bakery down to nothing if we ever divorced, replaced it with a monthly allowance Connor's father would control, and signed away any claim I'd have to spousal support no matter how long we were married. My own business, built before I ever met Connor, reduced to a line item his family wanted control over. Why is this necessary? I asked, my voice cracking. Connor wouldn't meet my eyes. It's just protection, Hannah, for both of us. Protection. The word felt like a slap on its own. I asked him if his mother had pushed this. He denied it, fast, too fast, like he'd rehearsed in the elevator on the way up. For 2 weeks, I'd searched for a reason any of this made sense. I checked his bank statements when he wasn't looking. I asked his friends carefully, casually, if something was going on at his job. I found nothing. No affair, no gambling debt, no secret problem. That explained why the man who'd proposed to me on a beach in Tobermory 18 months earlier was now asking me to sign away my livelihood the night before our wedding. And yet he kept pushing, kept sliding the pen toward me, kept saying, "Let's not make this harder than it has to be." Harder. I was 8 months pregnant with his child. I'd already paid the deposit on the venue out of my own savings. I'd already told my staff I'd be gone for 2 weeks on a honeymoon we'd planned to Prince Edward Island. And he was talking about convenience like I was negotiating a lease renewal. The lawyer, a thin man named Mr. Wentworth, cleared his throat. "Miss Reyes, once you sign, we can have this notarized tonight and proceed with tomorrow's ceremony as planned." My throat tightened. I looked down at the signature line. One signature, one moment. 4 years and a child on the way, reduced to initials at the bottom of a page. My mother, sitting quietly in the corner with her coat still on because she hadn't expected to be there long, finally spoke. Hannah, you don't have to do this tonight. Connor's jaw tightened. Mrs. Reyes, please, this is between Hannah and me. My mother went quiet, but I saw her hands clench in her lap. Tears burned behind my eyes. I didn't want to cry in front of a lawyer I'd met 20 minutes ago. I told myself it was just paperwork. I told myself, maybe this was how families like Connor's protected what they'd built, and maybe I was overreacting because I was hormonal and exhausted and scared. My fingers wrapped around the pen. The room went quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning 40 floors above the city. Then the door burst open. Everyone turned. An older man strode in, his coat still half-buttoned like he'd run from the parking garage. I recognized him immediately, even though I'd only met him twice. Connor's father, Edward Bishop, a man who'd built a logistics company out of Mississauga over 30 years, and who I'd always found quietly intimidating, the kind of man who didn't waste words. Connor stood up so fast his chair nearly tipped. Dad, what are you doing here? Edward didn't answer him. He crossed the room in 4 long strides, eyes locked on the document in front of me. And before anyone could stop him, he reached down and pulled the prenup out from under my pen so hard the paper tore at the corner. Nobody is signing anything tonight, he said. The lawyer half rose from his seat. Mr. Bishop, this is a private. It stops being private, Edward said. The second my son tries to steal a woman's business out from under her the night before he marries her. His voice wasn't loud. It was worse than loud. It was cold and absolutely certain. Connor's face had gone pale. Dad, you don't understand what's. I understand everything, Edward said, cutting him off. I understand it better than you do, because I've been watching your mother make calls for 3 weeks that she thought I didn't know about. The room went still. I looked between the two of them, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. What is he talking about? I asked. Nobody answered me right away. Edward set a leather folder down on the table, the kind of plain folder that somehow felt heavier than it looked. Open it, he said to the lawyer. Both of you need to see this before anyone signs another piece of paper in this building. Mr. Wentworth opened the folder with visibly shaking hands and began flipping through the pages, his expression shifting from confusion to something closer to alarm. What exactly am I looking at? He asked. Edward exhaled slowly, like a man setting down a weight he'd carried for weeks. 3 months ago, I found out my wife, Connor's mother, has been quietly moving money out of the family company's investment accounts into accounts under her sister's name, just over $310,000 so far, near as our accountant can tell. A murmur went through the room, even though there were only 4 of us in it. Connor lowered his head into his hands. I felt the floor tilt under me. What does that have to do with the bakery? I asked. What does that have to do with me? Edward looked at me, and for the first time that night, his expression softened. Everything, Hannah. Because when Connor found out about the missing money almost a year ago, he didn't come to me. He went to his mother privately, trying to fix it quietly so it wouldn't blow up the company or embarrass the family name before the wedding. I turned to Connor. He still wouldn't meet my eyes. Why didn't you tell me any of this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Edward answered before his son could. Because she convinced him it would protect you. She told him if word got out that she'd been stealing from the company, there'd be a lawsuit, maybe even criminal charges, and that the stress of all that, reporters calling, lawyers, depositions, would hurt you and the baby. She told him the only way to protect his future wife and his future business partner was to make sure nothing of yours was legally tied to the family if it all came crashing down. That's where the prenup came from. She didn't want to protect you, Hannah. She wanted to make sure that whatever she'd stolen couldn't be traced anywhere near your assets if this ever went to court. And she wanted your bakery's growth folded into the family's holdings so it would look, on paper, like there was nothing's missing at all. I stared at Connor. You let your mother talk you into stealing my business to cover up hers? His head came up finally, eyes red. I didn't see it that way. I swear to God, Hannah, I thought I was protecting you. Every time I tried to tell you, she'd call me, she'd cry, she'd say if this got out it would destroy everything. The company, Dad's reputation, our wedding. I thought if I could just get through the wedding, get the company's books quietly fixed, none of it would ever touch you. By taking my bakery from me the night before I married you, I said. It wasn't a question anymore. Connor's voice cracked. I never wanted that part. I swear. She's the one who had the lawyer add those clauses. I told her I didn't want it that way, and she said if I loved you, I'd understand why it had to be done this way for now. That we could undo it quietly after things settled down. I should never have listened to her. I should have told you the second I found out what she'd done. Edward placed a hand on his son's shoulder, but his eyes were still hard. He should have, but he's not the one who emptied $300,000 out of a company 40 employees depend on for their paychecks and let his own son carry the guilt of fixing it alone. He turned back to me. I am not going to stand here and let my wife's mess become the reason you lose what you built, Hannah. Not tonight. Not ever. Mr. Wentworth, still holding the folder, looked between the three of us like a man who badly wished he was somewhere else. Given what's been disclosed here, I'd strongly advise against finalizing any agreement tonight. Frankly, given the financial irregularities described, this firm may need to recuse itself from representing the family at all going forward. Relief washed over me so suddenly I had to grip the edge of the table. The wedding wasn't happening tomorrow. Not like this. Not with a torn prenup on the table and a stolen $310,000 hanging over all our heads. Connor closed his eyes. Edward let out a long breath, the anger in his shoulders finally easing into something closer to exhaustion. Outside this office, the three of us stood in the hallway under fluorescent lights, none of us speaking for a long moment. Finally, Connor turned to me. I'm sorry, Hannah. I handled every part of this wrong. His voice broke on the last word. I looked at the man I'd loved for 4 years, the man who'd hurt me more in the last 3 months than anyone ever had, and the man who, underneath all of it, had also been carrying something he didn't know how to put down. I'm still angry, I told him. You don't get to undo that with one apology in a hallway. I know, he said. You have every right to be. I crossed my arms over the curve of my stomach. If we're going to figure out what this even is anymore, I need honesty. All of it. Starting now and starting with your mother, who doesn't get anywhere near my bakery or this baby, until this is sorted out in front of a judge, not over family dinner. Connor nodded immediately. No more secrets. I mean that. We didn't get married the next day. The venue deposit was gone. The caterer was furious, and half my staff found out before I even had the chance to call them myself. Edward's lawyers spent the following months untangling what his wife had done, and eventually she was charged with fraud. A private, quiet humiliation for a family that had spent 30 years building a name in this city. Connor testified against his own mother in a deposition, something I don't think either of us thought he had in him until he actually did it. 6 weeks later, our daughter was born in a hospital on Sherburne Street, healthy, loud, and completely unaware of the mess she'd arrived into. Connor was in the room. So was my mother. Edward sent flowers the size of a small tree and a note that just said, "Whatever you decide about him, your business is yours." I made sure of it personally. He had every clause involving the bakery had been struck from any future agreement in writing before I even asked. It took us almost a year to decide we still wanted to get married, and when we finally did, it was small. 20 people in my mother's backyard in Scarborough, no lawyers, no prenup, no family business folded into the vows. Just the two of us, our daughter asleep in her grandmother's arms, and a cake I baked myself at 5 in the morning because some things you don't let anyone else do for you. People sometimes ask me if I regret how close I came to signing that night. I tell them the truth, that I think about it more than I'd like to, not because of what almost happened to the bakery, but because of how easily I almost let someone convince me that protecting the people you love means staying silent. The torn prenup didn't save my marriage. The truth did. Edward walking through that door, just forced the truth into the open faster than any of us were ready for. And once the lying stopped, Connor and I finally had the chance to choose each other for real. Instead of just going through the motions of a wedding neither of us fully understood yet.